Hey guys, it's Madison Estes. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a reading vlog. My library hosts an annual book sale where they give away these big bags full of books for like $2. So I amassed quite a few young adult horror books a couple weeks ago. During the bag sale, you just kind of like randomly grab whatever looks good. You don't really have a lot of time to analyze, read the backs and things like that because there's just so many other people that are grabbing books left and right. It's one of those situations where you really do have to judge a book by its cover. This is the massive stack of books that I got, and what I'm thinking for this video is that I'm gonna read about the first chapter or two out of half of them, kind of talk about which ones I like, which ones I'm gonna redonate, and then I'll take a short break, probably insert some B footage, and then finish the rest of the stack. Okay, so at some point the camera automatically shut itself off because I wasn't checking it. So I don't know if there's actually footage of me reading all of these, but I've got through about half the stack and I'm starving now. So I'm gonna talk about the books a little bit and then I'm gonna go grab a snack, and I have a writing group in a few hours, so it'll probably be nighttime before I get back and start on the second half of the stack. So the first book that I started reading was Sweetheart Evil Heart by R.L. Stine, and I was so excited whenever I found this. It's really hard to find any R.L. Stine or Christopher Pike books at the annual sale, and it's not exactly like the 90s vintage covers that I like, but it is like a step back or cutout, whatever you want to call it, and I do love those, even though this isn't like the painted style that I really like. But didn't love the first chapter. I went ahead and read the first two, and the guy is a total douchebag, total playboy, and he's got like all these girlfriends and stuff, and he's cheating on his official girlfriend, and it looks like there's this girl that has become obsessed with him. I feel like the blurb gives too much away, and I feel like maybe I'd be a little more interested if I didn't already know what the twist was. And also this looks like it's part of a series, which I don't love. It says episode 8, and then it has like a list of, this is kind of cool. It's got the Shady High yearbook, and then it's got like a list of characters that have died in the previous books. That's kind of cool, but I don't love that it's like in the middle of a series either. So I don't know. I'll probably go ahead and read this one. I'm just not as excited to read it as I was when I picked it up. This one is Midnight Secrets, The Temptation. This is the kind of cover that I love. It looks, like Christopher Pike, some of the R.L. Stine books, E.C. Andrews. I love it. I love the cover. The book itself is not as interesting. It's kind of funny. I think I actually said this out loud when I was reading it, like, oh my God, she's Harry Potter, because she has a birthmark on her hand, and every time she's in danger, like, she'll get a pain on her birthmark. So yeah, this was, hold on, I'm gonna look up what year this was published. Oh, 1994, which I believe is around the same time the first Harry Potter book came out. So probably not influenced by Harry Potter, probably just a coincidence, but I don't know, that's kind of funny. I'm probably gonna go ahead and finish reading it because I love the cover, which is a terrible reason to finish reading a book. But I like the cover, and even though there is a similarity to Harry Potter, I kind of like it. I kind of think it's interesting. So we'll see. This one is one I'm definitely not gonna finish reading. Obviously this is for like very young kids. I'm thinking this is like a 2nd or 3rd grade level. Bernie McGruer and the Drive-Through Funeral Parlor. I love the concept. It kind of reminded me of a Bizarro book called The Drive-Through Crematorium, which I still haven't read. So I love the concept, but there's so many characters and they're all just like talking heads. There's no personality. None of the characters are developed. It's not very friendly to new readers that aren't like a part of, that haven't read previous installments in the series. No, so far nothing's happened. So I'm just not interested enough to keep reading. This one's going back to the library. This one I really liked. I remember reading this when I was a kid. This one kind of reminds me of Flowers for Algernon. It's about a girl that was raised with dolphins, and scientists discover her and pick her up, and they start interviewing her and trying to teach her that she's a human. And I kind of like, I didn't like skim ahead. I mean, I can't talk. I skimmed ahead, and as you can see, kind of like Flowers for Algernon, it starts off very sparse words, very simple sentences, kind of trying to display that her mental state is very simple and she's just beginning to grasp the concept of sentences. And then later on it gets a little bit, I mean, not too complicated because it's still a book for kids, but it starts, you know, looking like a normal novel. And so I kind of get the feeling that that is what this book is sort of like another version of that. But I'm definitely going to reread it. Flowers for Algernon is one of my favorite books. So if this is anything like that, I think I'm really going to enjoy it. This one, I only read like a couple pages and I already decided I'm definitely going to finish reading this one. I love Neal Shusterman. I think the Unwind series is one of the best dystopian series of all time, which is about like where abortion has been outlawed, but you're allowed to technically abort a child that's been born if they have like disciplinary issues or the parents just decide to sign their kid up to be aborted, where they take all of the organs and stuff and they implant it in other kids. It's a great series. Anyways, and I've read a few other of his books and I haven't read this one, and I could just tell, like based on this one paragraph, that I'm probably gonna enjoy this book. My sister's on a high carb diet, which basically means she eats everything that dad can't have on his low carb diet. It makes them part of an evolved symbiotic relationship. That's science. Just because I'm an athlete doesn't mean I don't have brains. So I liked that. There's already some characterization on like the second or third page. And I like the concept. Oh wait, hold on. Okay, I had to reread it because I was a little confused. The main character's sister begins dating this guy, and then while she's dating him, the main character and his sister both start healing unnaturally. Like their scrapes heal unnaturally fast right before their eyes. Kind of cool. Kind of seems like she's dating a superhero and somehow his powers have transferred onto them. I think it's a cool concept, and I like pretty much any Shusterman book that has a sort of a high concept type book. Excuse you? Rude! Jeez, I guess he's not a fan of it. Okay, so the next book is Antsy Does Time, also by Neal Shusterman. And there's a reason I say that I'm really drawn to his books that are like high concept or have like fantasy elements or horror elements. Because this one does not. This one is about a guy who has a friend who tells him he has 6 months to live. I have a feeling that's not true. I don't know. I only read the first couple chapters, but I'm just not interested. Nothing about the concept or the characters is really pulling me into the story. And I read 2 chapters. I gave it a shot. I think that maybe 10 years ago, this would have been right up my alley. It kind of feels like a John Green book, although it's not written in the same style, but it kind of has that vibe. I guess the characters are really quirky and it's sort of more about like existential themes, but there's nothing supernatural, and like I'm not into this book, so I will be redonating this one. Okay, the next book, these are all out of order. I don't know what order I was reading these in. Funky Phobias. So I only skimmed this one, and I'm definitely keeping this one because I think that it's going to inspire me to write some horror stories about some phobias that are not so common. And I think it's a really interesting book too. Like, let's see, what were some of the more interesting ones in here? Puppophobia, which is fear of puppets. There's Pogonophobia, which is fear of beards. I think that could be an interesting, like, bizarro themed story. This one I think could be a really good theme for a short story. Don't know if I'm going to say this right. Ophthalmophobia, which is the fear of being stared at. I think that that could be a really cool thing to explore in a horror story. Yeah, so I just think this is a really neat find. I'm really glad I grabbed this one. I think I'm probably gonna... Oh my gosh! There's lutrophobia, fear of otters. Look at the illustration. That's great. So yeah, this was a good find, and I think that it's gonna inspire me to write some good horror stories in the future. This one, I loved the cover to this one, but the story is just not. I actually skimmed it to the end because I was curious whether or not he finds his sister and what was going on. And I think for kids would probably like this, although it feels a little bit difficult to get through for the age range that it's supposed to be targeting. This book, the main character's 11, and usually what I've heard is that authors will typically write the character's age to be a couple years older than what their intended audience is, because kids like to imagine themselves in the future. It's kind of like sort of like role model, I guess. And so that means the reading age is supposed to be 9 or 10, but some of the vocabulary and the way it's written, just look how dense those words are. It doesn't seem like it would be age appropriate for 9 or 10. So I don't know. I guess for a younger reader, they might be into it, but I didn't find it that interesting. And then I read to the end because I was curious, and it's like Edgar Allan Poe, like some version of him is in the story, and he's like helping the main character, but then he's not, and it's weird. It also doesn't seem to actually have any references to Edgar Allan Poe. It's just him talking about writing something throughout the story that relates to the main character, but it doesn't like have references to his short stories. It doesn't feel like it has a lot of Poe in it, and I kind of wonder what was the point. What was the point if you're not going to reference Edgar Allan Poe and put him in the story, like put his work in the story? I don't know. Next up is The Egypt Game. I read this in 6th grade. I was obsessed with Egypt in 6th grade. It does not hold up. I got about 40 pages in, and they're just now starting to get into like pretending they're Egyptians and stuff. And I remember this book, what the vague things I remember about it is I remember I liked the friendships in it and the way the characters developed. But 40 pages in, I don't care about these characters. I'll probably skim the rest of it, but this was kind of a letdown. This one is surprisingly a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's called What Waits in the Water, and I love the cover. I'm gonna take that sticker off because that's bugging the crap out of me. I love the cover. It looks very like early 2000s horror movie poster. It's definitely written for like young adults. There's a lot of focus on the relationship between her and her stepsister and why they don't get along. There was enough dialogue and development to hold my interest and to make me want to read more. And it takes place at like a lake house, so I'm thinking this will be a really fun summer read for me to go to the neighborhood lake and just kind of like hang out at the park. I think it'll be fun to read a book about a lake house and a bunch of teenagers hanging out at a lake house, and I'm assuming that people get murdered while hanging out at a lake. I think that that's always fun to kind of immerse yourself in the environment of the book if you can. So I'm definitely going to be reading this one this summer. And lastly, for the first half of this stack is Missing Since Monday by Anne M. Martin. She is, I believe, if it's the same Anne M. Martin, it'd be really weird if there was two of them. She's the writer of The Babysitter Club. And this book, Missing Since Monday, is about a girl whose stepsister goes missing while she's been babysitting her. So I think that's kind of funny. It's kind of like the author came up with a concept that was too dark for the Babysitter's Club, but maybe originally it was going to be a Babysitter's Club book, and then the author was like, actually that's too dark. I don't think those kids can handle it, so I'm gonna bump up the intended age range for the reader and make this into more of like a mystery thriller, which would probably be a very good call. But anyways, I liked the first couple chapters. It hooked me. I thought that it was interesting, and I love this cover. So I'm definitely gonna finish reading this one. I'm a little bit tired of reading. I can feel I'm getting a little bit of a headache behind my eyes. So I'm going to go take a break, eat something, I'm starving. And I have a writing group in about an hour, so I'm gonna go do all that and then come back and finish the stack. Okay, so I just finished the second half of the stack, and I think the first half was a little bit better. There's a few I'm really excited about, but there's quite a few duds too. So the first one, I think this is probably the one I'm most excited about out of all of the ones that I just read. It's called Acceleration by Graham McNamee. I think that's how you say it, McNamee, something like that. And it's about a guy who, like a teenager who's working like this really crappy transitional job. He's just a summer job. And he finds a book in the Lost and Found that appears to have been written by like a budding serial killer. And I like the premise, and then like the first chapter is like a lot darker than I thought it would be. The guy who wrote the journal is talking about drowning times, and basically what he's doing is he's drowning mice in different substances like oil and water, and he's counting how long it takes them to die. So that's one of the most messed up things I've ever read, and I've read a lot of really twisted stuff. It doesn't go into too much detail, but it's disturbing enough, just the idea. So I'm gonna read this. I don't think it'll probably get much worse than that. I'm really sensitive about animal cruelty. I can read it, it's not something I love reading about. But I have to admit, it did make a pretty good opening, because it makes me very curious about the kind of person that would do that. So I'm intrigued. I'm definitely gonna read this one. This one I went ahead and read because it's so short. It's called Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes. I picked it up because somebody at the book fair like picked it out for me and was like, you gotta read this, it's so good. So I read it, and I'm done. It's about a little girl that gets radiation sickness from the atom bomb, and somebody tells her, or she learns somehow, that if she makes 1,000 paper cranes that she'll be cured. And guess what? It's based on a true story. I think you know why I'm not happy with this book. Anyways, I think it's pretty obvious for people my age what's gonna happen, but that didn't mean that I wasn't like really sad reading this. I was bummed out reading this. I cannot imagine. I think the age range is supposed to be like 2nd, 3rd grade. That's pretty dark for a 2nd or 3rd grade book. Like, I don't remember if I read this in school or not, but I feel like if I did, they definitely owed us like some goosebumps afterwards, or like some Henry and Mud. I don't know if you read that series, but it's like a really cute story about a guy and his dog. Something uplifting, okay? It's a real bummer, so do not recommend. This one is called The Voice on the Radio by Caroline B. Cooney. It's apparently a companion novel to The Face on the Milk Carton, which I have never read. I didn't know it was the companion to that book, even though I should have guessed it, because on the back it just talks about the face on the milk carton and whatever happened to Janie. And I was like, okay, what's this book about? I don't know. It's like one of my pet peeves is whenever a book is talking about other books on the back. It's like, okay, but what are you about? It's kind of like being on a really bad date with someone that consistently talks about other people and not themselves. Anyways, I read the first chapter, and it's about this guy that's like working at a radio station or something, or he's trying to be a radio personality, and he starts sharing the story about his girlfriend who apparently found a picture of herself on a milk carton. I don't know. I might see if my library has the first book. It feels kind of weird to just jump into the companion book. And I still don't really know anything about what's going to happen, which, I don't know. I go into movies blind all the time, so maybe I should just not know what's going to happen in this book. I'm assuming, though, somebody's going to call into the show and, like, start giving them threatening messages or something. Like, that would be the most logical conclusion, I think. This one is called Horizon by Scott Westerfeld, and it kind of reminds me of Yellow Jackets. It's about these 8 kids that are on a plane, and it goes down, and they find themselves, oh, this is kind of interesting. It says it goes down in the Arctic, but whenever they get out of the plane, they find themselves lost in a strange jungle. So maybe there might be some supernatural elements in this. I'm picturing something like Jumanji. I don't know, but it sounds really interesting. I didn't love the first chapter, but I do like the premise a lot. Next up is Dreadlocks by Neal Shusterman. And this is part of his Dark Fusion series, and I read one of those books before. I think I read one about like Little Red Riding Hood or something. It's been so long. It was probably like 2010 when I was really deeply into Neal Shusterman books. I kind of thought Dreadlocks for some reason, I guess because of the picture. I was thinking this was gonna have something to do with Medusa, because all of these books are kind of like fairy tale themed or mythology themed. But after having read the first 3 chapters, I think that it's gonna be more along the lines of Goldilocks, which makes sense, like dreadlocks, Goldilocks. The main character is like this really rich, snobby guy, and he's at least self-aware, which makes him a little more tolerable. He goes on in the first chapter ranting about how he doesn't want anything because he's so rich, and being too rich makes you not want things. Okay. In the 3rd chapter, he finds out that the new girl next door has been sleeping in his bed. So pretty sure there's a Goldilocks theme going on. That's kind of where I stopped reading. So kind of interesting. I'm definitely going to finish reading this one. Hopefully the main character will be a little more tolerable moving forward. At least now he has an actual problem in his life. He's got this girl that apparently has no boundaries. So should be interesting. This next book is one I grabbed. It says Spectacular Special Effects by Diana Kempton. It seems very out of date. It talks about like just kinds of special effects that I don't think people do anymore. And I don't even know if I would want to redonate it because it's so old. Curious what year it was published. 2002, yeah. So we've made some progress since 2002. I think I might just throw this one away. This one, oh my god, this is the worst one I picked up. This one's really bad. It's called Belle by Cameron Doki, and I despise this book. It's kind of like the author tried to combine Beauty and the Beast with Jane Eyre, because the Beast is blind in this. I actually read the whole thing. Well, I read the first couple chapters. I was disgusted because I hate the main character so much, and I was like, I almost just hate reading this. I'm like, I kind of want to see where it goes, because this character is unbearably obnoxious and conceited and self-absorbed. Does the Beast eat her in this one? It looks like, and it is, you know, like romance, dark romance, fantasy romance, but I was kind of like, does he at least eat her? Do we at least get that? But no, it's a happily ever after kind of ending. Yeah, just for one thing, like the whole first part of the book, she's talking about beauty, and beauty is this, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but beauty is subjective. But then she kind of contradicts herself later on, because she's like, my sisters are so much more beautiful than I am. I'm just regular. And she just seems really obsessed with appearances, like in a way that's super obnoxious. And it's just like the way she talks too. Annabelle Evangeline Delorier. That's my name, after my father's mother and my mother's mother, in that order. But though it was my father who decided the entirety of what I would be called, it was my mother who sealed my fate and set my tale in motion. For she was the one who decreed I would be known as Belle, a name that means beauty in the land of my birth. Blah. And there's just like so much talking about like her compared to her sisters, and my second sister was born on the first day of the month of April, just as the sun rose above the horizon. It was on such a day as this that I was born. A perfectly fine face, just not extraordinary, and therein lies the problem, for the beauty of my sisters can actually take a person's breath away. The whole first chapter is just this girl being really like self-conscious and obnoxious. And not only that, this book also has a major pacing problem where she doesn't even meet the Beast until like 130 pages in like a 200-page book. She doesn't even meet him. Like, is the whole first 100 pages just her rambling about herself? I think so. This was like up there with Twilight in terms of protagonists that just, their inner dialogue drives me nuts and is really difficult to get through. Do not recommend this one at all. And then another fairy tale disappointment, although not quite as bad. This one is called Cloaked in Red by Vivian van de Velde. I think that's how you say her name. And it's Scholastic, even though that cover looks, I mean, okay, Scholastic, definitely phoning it in with this cover art. It's kind of mean. Oh well. Anyways, and I say that, I did just talk shit about the cover, and yet I had expectations based on the cover. This was gonna be like dark romance. At first I thought it was gonna be a novel, but it's actually a collection of short stories. All of them are retellings of The Little Red Riding Hood, and I didn't like the first two. The second one didn't even have anything to do with Red Riding Hood other than the fact that there's the woodcutter, and the girl's a seamstress, and she's like working on a red cloak or something. I don't know. I started to space out. I got really bored. but it doesn't really have anything to do with the fairy tale. And the first one is kind of a retelling, except, spoiler alert, the wolf's not the bad guy. So I don't know. I was just expecting a lot more. I'll definitely just redonate this one or give it away or something, but I was bummed that both of the fairy tale fantasy retellings were just both duds. This one, I don't know. I like it. I like the cover. It looks very like early 90s, 80s. I mean, doesn't it kind of look like Silence of the Lambs or something like that? Like it would be very mature horror. And the protagonist reads like she's in middle school. Like, it's not what I expected at all. So I'll probably still read it, although that's weird, right? Like, this is not marketing for middle schoolers. No matter what decade you're looking at, this is like something the middle schooler sneaks in their backpack and reads while they're pretending to read something else. So we'll see. As for the content of the story, she's basically just really excited they're moving into this big mansion. And that's what the first 2 chapters are about. It's just her being excited. Like, there's no conflict, there's no tension. It's just this girl rambling about how excited she is. So I'll probably read a few more chapters, and then if it doesn't get better, I might skim it to see if it looks like it gets better. But so far, this is not off to a great start, and the cover was very deceiving. Next up is Radiance by Alison Noel. I actually read a book by this author before called Evermore that I had mixed feelings about. This one is about her sister, who apparently passes away, moves on to the next life. There's something called the viewing room where she can look down her sister and kind of see what's going on in her life and sort of play guardian angel, I'm guessing. And I read the first 3 chapters, and the third one ends with her deciding to go into the viewing room. So I'm guessing that's going to be the conflict, is her like wanting to interfere in her sister's life. And it looks like there might be some kind of like love triangle too, because this is kind of romance themed. She's been assigned a job, soul catcher, and her teacher is a cute, seemingly nerdy boy. How are you seemingly nerdy? Either you are or you aren't. Being nerdy is a vibe. Anyways, and it says they return to Earth for her first assignment, a radiant boy who's been haunting a castle in England. Okay, so even though the first 3 chapters made this seem like she's going to be following her sister, it looks like maybe something else is going on. I don't know. I feel like if this is supposed to be like related to that series, why would you not have her watching over her sister? It doesn't even mention her sister on the back. We'll see. I don't know. I'm going to be really disappointed if it's not about her following her sister, because that seems a lot more interesting to me than what's on the back of this. Last was A Stranger Came Ashore by Molly Hunter. I do really like that painted cover, but the writing style was not very good. And that was kind of a bummer because this is the last one that I read tonight. It's about selkies, which I've never read before, and I'm not very familiar with the concept. But basically, he is the stranger that is washed ashore. He's very handsome. The main character sister kind of falls for him at first sight, but it turns out he's a bad dude. He is a selkie. I don't understand why, unless the writer's like, well, kids aren't going to know what selkies are, so it's fine to start off your very first page with, it was a while ago when folks used to tell stories about creatures called the selkie folk. It's like, okay, I feel like you kind of gave away the story. Either way, it's basically just the main character is the only one that's sensible. He knows that there's something wrong with this new guy and that his sister's in danger. And I kind of skimmed ahead. Very predictable plot. Doesn't look like there's anything, like any interesting twists or turns. And I just didn't like the way it was written, like the language that was used. It doesn't really flow very well. So I'm glad I just skimmed this one and didn't waste a lot of time on it. Definitely going to be redonating this one. So although I'm not totally crazy about any of the books that I picked up, I do think that Acceleration, the one about the guy that picks up the serial killer's journal, and the 2 Shusterman books that are like fantasy themed are probably going to be pretty good reads, and I'm looking forward to those. If you've read any of these books, please let me know what you think of them in the comments section below. And if you think that I've misjudged any of these books, then feel free to state your case in the comments section, and maybe I'll give it a second chance. Except for Belle. No, not that book. Thank you so much for joining me on this reading vlog. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and be sure to subscribe. On this channel, I post reviews, writing advice, horror commentary, and vlogs. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later.